I'm the oldest of 4 kids. If any of you have siblings, you might understand what that means. Let me apologize on behalf of the oldest children because we can be really annoying. In my family growing up, being the oldest was a big deal. I was given added responsibility, and I often served as a substitute for my parents. When they weren't around, I was left in charge, and my siblings were expected to do what I said. Many people describe feeling like they had to compete to get their parents' attention or approval. But I don't know what that's like, really. I didn't have to compete. The responsibility that they gave me came with a lot of privileges. I never had to call shotgun. I just always got the front seat because I was the oldest. Being the oldest in this kind of family created some interesting stories in the family lore. So here's just one example. My sister, the third child, she's the blonde in those pictures, has always been really strong-willed. One time when I was like 11 or 12, she would have been like 8. My mom left me in charge and said that my sisters needed to clean their room while she was gone. My sister, though, didn't want to clean her room, and she made that very clear to me with a stomp of her foot and a glare. The power and confidence that my parents put in me was such that all I had to do was put my hands on my hips, tilt my head, and give her a stern look. And she ran away crying. To be honest, our family laughs about this now, but this wasn't exactly the best foundation for a good brother-sister relationship. In that situation, and in many others like it, I had the clear feeling that I had the moral authority, that I got to tell other people what's right and wrong. I could tell my siblings what to do, and they were supposed to listen. I was the oldest, and therefore, I was right. I'd like to tell you that this stopped when I became an adult. And it did, sometimes. When my sister graduated high school, she moved in with me for a while to be a nanny for my son, who's now doing the slides back there. That's when I discovered, to my shock and horror, that no one had taught my sister the correct way to vacuum a room. You see, every little bit of the floor should be covered in a consistent pattern. That way you make sure that nothing gets missed. That makes sense, right? My sister, though, vacuums in a very messy and random way, just like this way and that, just whatever spot she feels like. So when I noticed that she was doing it wrong, and I corrected her, she laughed at me. That was over 10 years ago, so you might think that we had grown out of this. But I can assure you, no, we have not. After I took the time to correct her all those years ago, it came up again this last Christmas. She's still doing it wrong. I even learned recently that there were times she did it wrong on purpose, so that I would come and take over for her. Can you believe that? Little children, man. The Bible is filled with stories about siblings. Usually brothers, like Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau, Joseph and his brothers, even Mary and Martha. These stories are highly relatable, and Jesus used them to powerful effect. Did you experience any fighting or competition between your brothers and sisters growing up? Did you ever get the sense that one or more of your siblings got extra attention or better treatment? Well, that may have been your experience in your family growing up. In the eyes of God, there's no extra attention or special treatment. Where human families fall short, God the Father does not. There were some religious leaders in Jesus' time called Pharisees. They were a group of very strict religious leaders, the type of people who believed that they were better than everyone else. They had lots of rules and laws for how to live, and they were pretty good at following those rules and laws, at least in their own opinion. The Torah, which is part of what we call the Old Testament, gave over 600 rules for the ancient Jews to follow. There were several hundred "you must" commands and several hundred "you must not" commands. That's quite a lot to keep track of. The Pharisees, though, they believed that in addition to those 600 plus laws of the written Torah, that there was also an oral law passed down verbally, generation to generation, that was equally as important to follow as the written law. Experts think there were at least several hundred rules like this, additional rules in Jesus' time. Maybe even several thousand additional rules in Jesus' time that the Pharisees expected people to follow. For instance, twice a week, they would go a whole day without eating any food as a religious practice called fasting. Exactly 10% of all money that they earned would go to the temple. They would even set aside, when they sat down to a meal, they would even set aside a tenth of the food they were eating for God. They would even set aside a tenth of the seasoning and the little herbs they get from their garden for God. They'd wear these little boxes with Bible verses in them called phylacteries, but they made a point of making sure that they were really big so that everyone would see them and know that the Pharisees were wearing them. One expert said you could spot a Pharisee pretty easily. If you were walking behind one, chances are that they'd stop to say their prayers. If it was the set time to pray, they might just freeze right there in the middle of the road. They'd say part of the prayer, and then walk a little bit more, and stop, say a little bit more of the prayer, and on and on. They didn't try to keep it private. They'd pray right out in the open, in a busy market or on street corners where everyone could see, oh, that's a Pharisee. They're praying. Look how religious they are. They'd stand up straight, fix their clothes, stay very still, and bow down. And it didn't matter what they were doing. If one of them was working, they'd stop working. If they were carrying something heavy, they'd drop it. Even if they were about to get on a horse, right, got their foot in the stirrup, no, they'd pull their foot back and stop and pray. If there was like a snake slithering around their feet, they would ignore it. Gotta pray. If a king is greeting them in the middle of a prayer, they're not going to answer a king. Praying always came first. The Pharisees lived like they had moral authority, that they got to tell other people what's right and wrong. They looked down on people who weren't doing things the right way. Sort of like when I go into oldest brother mode on my sister, when I act like I'm better than her because she's not doing things the way that I think is the best. There's a passage in Luke where we learn that Jesus went and had dinner with these guys, the Pharisees. Even though they acted like they were better than everyone else, Jesus still wanted a friendship with them. After that dinner, Jesus was hanging out with some people that the Pharisees thought they were better than. The Pharisees started talking loudly, right in front of them, about complaining and criticizing about Jesus being so friendly with these people. Basically, they were saying, hey, we know about those people. They don't have their lives put together the right way. A religious person like Jesus shouldn't be hanging out with them. The Pharisees, they didn't understand the way that Jesus looks at people. So to teach them, Jesus tells this story right there and then about two brothers. This is a classic sibling story featuring greed, jealousy, favoritism, and even pettiness. Then Jesus said, a man had two sons. The younger son said to his father, give me my share of the property. So the father divided the property between his two sons. Then the younger son gathered up all that was his and traveled far away to another country. There's actually a lot going on in these first few verses. There's something a little bit selfish, maybe a little greedy about this request from the younger son. So none of his father's property is actually his until his father dies, traditionally. Until that time, he and his brother would normally work together to grow their father's wealth and then there'd be more for them both to share when he dies. By taking his share of the property, the brother isn't just taking money from the family now, he's actually taking money from them in the future. And he's kind of showing that the money is more important to him than his family and his father are. Asking for his inheritance at this time was kind of like saying, I wish you were dead already. When it does show an independent streak that a lot of us admire these days, back then a son would almost never do this. In Jewish culture, sons typically didn't leave home. Usually, when they got married even, they would build a room onto their father's house, maybe even their grandfather's house, and live there with their wife. And what a father the son had in this situation. Even though he wants something very different for his son in this choice, he allows him to make his own decisions and figure things out for himself. As a parent, I know how hard that is, and I love to see that in the story. So Jesus continues the story, explaining that the younger son wasted all the money in a faraway country in a pretty short time. Then a time comes in that land where there's no food, and the son ends up with a really awful job feeding pigs. One day he looks at the gross food the pigs are eating, and he thinks, this is crazy. What am I doing here? I need to rethink my life. My dad's workers get treated better than this. I'm going to go home. I'm going to tell my dad I'm not good enough to be his son, and I'll ask him to just let me work for him. So the son goes home, but his father surprises him. You see, every day that he's been gone, his father's been looking at the horizon, waiting for his son's return. While he's still way down the road, his father sees him and runs out to meet him. The son doesn't even get to finish the little speech he has prepared about how he's so unworthy and blah, 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 before his father is hugging him, changing him out of his dirty, torn clothes and into nice, clean clothes. His father throws him a big party, and almost everyone is celebrating the return of this son who left and wasted so much of the family's money. This is a beautiful picture of God's love for us. God wants to be in relationship with us, regardless of whether we deserve it or not. He celebrates when we return to him. But, just like the Pharisees, when they see Jesus hanging out with those people, they look down on him. Not everyone in this story is happy about the brother returning, or about the way that his father is welcoming him back and celebrating his return. Jesus continues. The older son was angry and would not go into the feast. So his father went out and begged him to come in. Do you hear that? The father wants both of his sons at this party, to the point that he actually leaves the party to try to gently convince the superior brother to join in. He actually begs him. He really wants him. Both sons are loved by their father. Both sons belong to the family. We all want to belong and be included in this way. And in God's love, we all are. God is coming after you. He's coming out to find you. Wherever you are, he wants to try to persuade you to join him at the feast. But the older son said to his father, I have served you like a slave for many years, and have always obeyed your commands. But you never gave me even a young goat to have at a feast with my friends. I've got to say, I can understand the older brother here. For most of my life, and in many ways even to this day, I have been a rule follower. Maybe too much of a rule follower even. But I have to admit, rules aren't everything. Just the other day, one of my rules came up at work. I kept saying that my coworker was doing something wrong. I argued with them and I tried to prove my point, but then I was actually really embarrassed when they showed me, for sure, no doubt, that what I wanted was actually not as good as what they were doing. My rules failed me. The opposite of living by rules is living by grace. Grace is favor, mercy, love, or kindness that people don't have to earn. To live by grace is to stop expecting perfection. To stop expecting everyone to follow all the rules before you'll like them and treat them well. This has to start with giving grace to ourselves. This is actually really hard for me. If being hard on yourself for your failings for an Olympic sport, I'm pretty sure that I could do that. I expect a lot from myself, and I am constantly disappointed. I struggle to keep the routine that I should in terms of when I get up, when I go to bed, how often I work out. I don't eat as healthy as I should. Sometimes I give my attention to my phone instead of the people that I care most about. I've made stupid choices with money even. But more important than any of those things, I don't always treat people the way that I should. Sometimes I lose patience with my kids. I've hurt my relationships with family members. I could go on and on. I have a lot of failings. It's really easy to talk meanly to myself about these things. It is hard for me to be gracious with myself. But being gracious with yourself is a whole topic on its own. It could be a whole sermon. So I'll just briefly share a few things that I'm trying to do. Talk to yourself like you would a close friend that you love. So that goes for the things you say to yourself in your head. When you mess up, when you make a mistake, the way you respond, the things you say to yourself. Talk to that person, you, as if they're one of your close friends that you really love. Those people make mistakes, but I find that I often talk way worse, way meaner to myself in my head than I would ever talk to a friend who makes the same mistake. As you practice being gracious with yourself, you may find it's easier to be gracious to other people. Because the same failures that are in them are in you, and vice versa. And then as a kind of sacred practice, notice how you look at yourself in the mirror. Literally, when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, most people have some kind of feature that they don't like and are self-critical about. But when God looks at you, he doesn't see you with critical eyes. He sees you through the eyes of grace. He doesn't focus on the flaws that you have. So I challenge you, at least once, look at yourself the same way. And maybe, while you're looking in the mirror, say something positive to yourself, out loud. It might feel a little weird, but just try it. Jesus hasn't finished his story yet. The older brother continues complaining about his younger brother. Your other son, who wasted all your money on prostitutes, comes home, and you kill the fat calf for him. Do you hear that sense of moral authority, moral superiority of that older brother? He doesn't understand God's grace. He thinks his brother should have to earn the love of their father. I get his anger and his younger brother, though I do. When I see people getting away with doing the wrong things, I get upset too. I even judge movies for this. More than once, I've finished a movie and complained, that can't be the ending. All the things that character did, and nothing bad happened to them. This comes up a lot with driving too. I have very strong thoughts and feelings about how someone should drive. If you merge too early, I'm judging you. The people who designed the roads, they made that lane end when they did for a reason. If you drive slow in the fast lane, I'm judging you. If you turn into the wrong lane, you're making a turn, again, judgment. But, like most people who follow the rules, I only care about the rules that I care about. So, don't ask how far over the speed limit I usually drive. or how long I stop at a stop sign. What about you? Do you ever get upset at people for not following the rules that are important to you? When someone loads the dishwasher the wrong way, or shows up late, or ignores boundaries that you've set with them? A while back, Michael taught about the idea of a bounded set. In a bounded set, you're either in or you're out. You're on the naughty list or the nice list. You're a good guy or a bad guy. You're rooting for the home team, or in my case, against them. But a centered set is not so black and white. The measurement is not how close you are to the center. The measurement is how close you are to the center. It's not whether you're on a certain list or not. Applying this to faith, we can see God at the center of the set, with all of us trying to get closer to Him. In the centered set way of looking at the world, it's not about who's getting it right or wrong. It's about asking ourselves, how can we grow closer to God and be more like Jesus? Grace is at the heart of the Christian message. It is the core of what God offers to us and what Jesus showed in His life. The preacher and author Fred Craddock once wrote, "Grace is the presence of a God who sends rain upon the good and evil, and who is kind even to the ungrateful and selfish. The true work of grace in us is to make us gracious also." God's grace should change how we think and act from the inside out. It's not enough for us to accept God's grace when we mess up. As we come to realize the ways that we mess up and are still accepted by God, we should be rethinking not only the way that we live, but the way that we think about and treat others. The grace and acceptance that God gives to us should be something that we in turn extend to other people who also mess up. Drawing closer to God and being more like Jesus means learning how to give grace to those it is hard for us to give grace to. It can be easy to give grace to someone that we like or get along with, or who's done wrong things against us, or others that we see as not that big of a deal. But Jesus didn't stop with giving grace to the people whom He liked. He gives it to everyone, and we should do the same. We see the Father reply to His older son's anger with grace. The Father said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. We had to celebrate and be happy because your brother was dead, but now he is alive. He was lost, but now he is found." The message of Jesus to the Pharisees through this story is that God's grace, His kindness, and forgiveness is for everyone. It's for the younger brothers who aren't doing it right and need to make better choices. And it's for the older brothers who think that they have it all together and need to learn to treat other people better. But of course, that's not just the message of Jesus to the Pharisees. It's the message of Jesus to us, to me. There's a twist in the story with the Pharisees, because some of them did, in fact, change their way of living and follow Jesus. There was Nicodemus. He was a Pharisee who, in the end, helped make sure that Jesus' body was given a respectful burial. Even Paul, who actually wrote a large part of the New Testament, he was at one point a Pharisee. When we interact with other people, we must keep in mind that they have had different backgrounds and life experiences than we've had. They're at different places in their spiritual journey than we are. Maybe right now, they're the older brother, angrily judging the ones around them who don't measure up. Maybe right now, they're the younger brother, partying and wasting their life on things that are fun but don't really matter. Wherever you see them now, is not the end of their story. Things can still change for them. Show grace, kindness, and patience like the Father that we see in this story. I have to confess to you, as I've been preparing this sermon, I've been reflecting on my own life, and I've discovered a lot of the proud attitude of the older brother in this story myself. It's there in relation to my family. It's there in relation to my workplace. In relation to people that I play basketball with. Even in relation to the way that I see myself. I think it was always there. I am an oldest child, after all. But I'm realizing it's really grown over the years. I've let it grow. And it's ugly. I'm not proud of it. I encourage you to look for it in your own life. You might be surprised what you find. I have a few questions for you to consider when you think about this passage. Where has that sense of having the right to judge other people become part of your life? Who are the people in your life that you're struggling to be kind to, whether they deserve it or not? What can you do to take a step towards grace with those people? Let us prepare ourselves to go to the Eucharist table. I think the most amazing thing about grace is how it changes us. When you realize just how much God loves you, not because you have earned it or deserve it, but because you are so special to Him, you can't help but be changed. I think the expectation God has for you is that the grace you have received will be given away. There are people all around you who don't deserve grace. They can't earn it. And they can't figure it out for themselves. But you have the privilege of giving grace to others. So as you prepare to go to the table, take a moment with this question. Who needs God's grace from you? Maybe a name comes to mind. Maybe a couple names. Take a few moments and let that question sink into your heart. Who needs God's grace from you? At the communion table, we take bread, representing Christ's body, broken on the cross for us. We dip it into wine or juice, representing Christ's blood, shed on the cross for us. We take that into our body as a symbol of God's grace given to us at the cross. The journey is a place of acceptance and grace, always pointing you to God's love. Guests, the communion table is always open to you. When you are ready, respond to God at the table. Lord, I pray for anyone who is burdened with shame in this church. Their burden is great, God. Your grace brings acceptance and love. I pray everyone listening will more and more fully embrace just how much you love them. We now come to the table, remembering your life, death, and resurrection. Amen. The tables are open. We open.